So next lesson plan is converting decimals, percents, and fractions, and it's a very good review for pre-algebra students. A lot of them, they forget it. They technically learn this actually in the 5th and 6th grade, but some information kind of get lost and they forget it. And these are things that you should always remember. So I'm going to do a quick review on this and learning how to convert decimals, fractions, and percents. And the way I usually teach this topic is I start from beginning, the easier ones, and then you'll see a little more challenging ones. And you understand sometimes numbers don't come out the way you want it to come out. It's not as clean. But you have to understand that. Math is a lot following rules and understanding, follow this theorem and this theorem always works. So sometimes even when numbers don't come out correctly, it's not normal to you, it really is the correct answer. So let's start off with number 1. And you have 25%. So I'm going to convert. So if I get a percent, I'm going to convert to a decimal and a fraction. So let's convert to a decimal. How do you convert percent to a decimal? Well, what you do is the percent sign, you change that to a decimal, and then you move 2 spaces to the left. That's what you do. So you'll get 25, and then there's a decimal here, right? And then you move it 1, 2 spaces. So the answer is 0.25 as a decimal. So you go 2 spaces to the left. So what you do is first, again, you change the percent to a decimal and move 2 spaces to the left. And that's how you convert percent to decimal. And the next thing you do, how do you change your fraction? Well, the way you change your fraction is that you change the percent and you see how many numbers there are, and there's 2. So you got to do 3. 3 over 100. Okay? So generally that's how I do it. Or you can convert from a decimal also. I mean, there's different ways you can do it. You can convert to here, and then you can see it's 25 over 100, 25 hundredths, the way you say it, so it's over 100. And you reduce that, 25 over 100 is 1/4. Okay? So that's how you convert that into a fraction. So that's the first example. And the second example, you get a fraction now. Now you get converted to a percent and a fraction, and a decimal. So let's do a decimal first. So how do you do that? Oh, okay, so what you do is it's 7 and 25, right? So you just divide it. Remember long division? So into 7, and you put 2 zeros to see what happens. And you do a little bit of long division. Okay, 25 goes in 8 times. Okay, so you get 200 and no remainder. Perfect. So your answer is going to be 0.28. Okay, so now we got to change it to a percent. How do we change it to a percent? So we can change it from a decimal, as easiest, to a percent. So 28 100ths to a percent is just 28. Let's do it like this. And then you move 2 spaces to the right from the decimal to change percent. Remember, when you change from percent to decimal, you move 2 spaces to the left. Now you move 2 spaces to the right. It's kind of like a backward thing. So you move 2 spaces to the right, okay, and then you'll get 28%. Okay. So next problem now, we have a decimal. So from here, I want to change it to a percent and a fraction. So how do I do that? Well, let's change your percent first because that's the easiest way. Remember what we did? We moved 2 spaces to the right from the decimal. So decimal moves 2 spaces to the right. So let me write this here and then go 1, 2, hippity hop. Okay? So the decimal will be here, so now it's 85%. The decimal will convert that to a percent, 85%. Now I got to change that into a fraction. So how do I do that? Well, 85% changes to over 100, okay? Or a more clear way, I think, I don't want to confuse you, is easier to just leave it as a decimal and then change it into a fraction. Because it's 85 100, so it's easier to read. So unless you're very familiar, I wouldn't change it from a percent to a decimal. I would rather change it from a decimal to a percent, or percent to decimal. It's just easier to see it than a fraction. So you get 85 over 100 right here, right? And then you can reduce that, right? Because they're divisible by 5. So you'll get 85 divided by 5 is 17. And then 100 divided by 5 would be 20. And that is the answer for this. 17 over 20. So we're going to get into the next problems. And you'll see they're a little more challenging. which is a good thing because, I mean, most people probably can do this, but when they see this, they're like, oh, the numbers aren't familiar anymore. And I know a lot of teachers, they like to use very nice, clean numbers for their students because they don't want them to fail. I'm not like that. I want you to understand how it works, so I'm going to give you some messier numbers. But at least you understand you follow the same rules. It's nothing different, okay? So 29.5%. So how do you change that into a decimal? Well, remember the same rule. Move 2 spaces to the left in the decimal, right? So let me write this again. And then I jump 2 spaces to the left. And I'll get 0.295. Right? And then now, how do I change that into a fraction? Well, let's change it from the decimal. It's the easier way. So how do you read that? 200.295 or 295 thousandths, right? That's another way to read it. 295 thousandths is 3 spaces, right? So it's 295 over 1,000. Okay? And then you can reduce that. You can divide by 5, okay? There's a cool way actually to learn how to divide by 5. It's basically you multiply by 2 and divide by 10. It's the same thing, right? It's one of those little tricks I used to learn doing mental math. So it's 59 over 200. 59 is a prime number, so you can't, it doesn't really go into it. Okay? So the answer is 59 over 200. Okay? Now, number 5, 4 over 13. So, okay, how do you convert that into a decimal? Well, same rule up here. Remember, you just divide into it. Put a couple of zeros here. Okay, .00 and put a decimal up here. 13 goes into 40 3 times. Okay. 13 goes in 0 times. Okay, 13 goes in 100 about 7 times. And let's do one more space. 13, pull down another 0, and you can get, what, 6? Yeah. So you'll get 78. You get 12 13ths. Okay? So decimal, if you do it to the nearest 10 thousandths, you get 0.3076. Or you could, you know, round that up to the hundreds. I usually like doing hundreds. I think that's a perfect number. 0.31 is a good estimate, usually enough. Okay? But this is good. I mean, if you do it to this, I just do 4 spaces. Okay? So that's the decimal. Okay? So what if you need to do it, change it to a percent? So easiest way is to do it from the decimal. Okay? So 0.30, let's remember the rule, move 2 spaces to the right from the decimal. So let's copy this over and move 2 spaces to the right. So we'll hop a couple of spaces again. Hop, hop. Okay, so it's over there. And you'll get 30.76%. Okay? So we see, you know, 5 problems. You can see the difficulty changes as it goes down. But it's the same rules, the same everything. You see the numbers aren't as clean as the other ones. Okay, so number 6. Now we get 1.2 as a decimal. So it's not your usual, you know, between 0 and 100%, because a lot of people understand, they understand 0%, they understand 100%, everything in the middle. But when someone tells you, oh, I'm 600%, 50%, 650% greater than you, don't understand what that means. It's like, how do you have more than 100%? So this is where the example starts coming in, okay? So 1.2, let's say it's a decimal. Now we got to convert that into a percent. So what do? Same rule. Remember the rule, move 2 spaces to the right, okay? Now what happens here is that there's only 1 space to move. So what do you do when there's only 1 space, but you say hop 2 spaces, right? So you put a 0 here. You can easily do that because 1.20 is the same thing as 1.2. So now, do the same thing, hoppity hop, 2 spaces to the right. So now I get 120. So the answer is 120%. Not 12%, 120% because you need 2 spaces, okay? So you have to always count 2 spaces to the right when you change it to percent from a decimal, and vice versa, the other way around. So now, you want to convert that now into a fraction. So what do? 1.2. How do you change that in a fraction? Well, this is tenths, right? So we're going to have 12 over 10, okay? Because there's 12 here, and you're doing tenths. Okay, yeah, I see 12 here. So 12/10 is the fraction, but you can reduce that, so you get 6/5. So 1.2 as a decimal is the same thing as 6/5 as a fraction. So I'm hoping you understand how to convert now from decimals, fractions, and percents. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'll continue next lesson.